wine and I've got my glass of water so that I can sort of be
Double
fisting or responsible, as it can be, right, hopefully.
Yeah.
So I know we're waiting for a few people still.
Yeah, we're waiting for a few more. Oh, here's Ryan.
Ryan, nice. Slowly connecting. Let me know.
Hi, Ryan.
Hey, Ryan.
Connecting. Technology.
It's kind of amazing when you think about it, right?
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Absolutely.
So did everybody survive Friday today? Is that going well?
Yeah, Fridays are always secretly nice, you know, no matter what's going on Friday.
I know every day is a little bit like Friday right now, but not really. But
is anyone else having a hard time just like telling what day of the week it is? Like, like Tuesday, and I'm like, oh, it's the weekend, and I'm like, oh my god, no, it's not.
I sent out a text on Wednesday, was like, happy Tuesday, let's get on this fine Tuesday, and she was like, it's Wednesday, and I was like, is it? You know.
okay.
It was only one day off, you know.
Yeah. Such bad, right? It's time
close enough.
Relative. Exactly. Well, there's so I don't know where Ryan went. He sort of disappeared.
Yeah, maybe he'll come back and try it again. So while we're waiting for some people, I guess, you know, I can sort of start talking a little bit about what Fireside at 5 is. We started, I'm Gertie. I'm one of the co-founders of Fireside at 5. We started this platform really to bring community together during this time. That is something that is our main mission at the end of the day, is just connecting and collaborating. And so, you know, we're doing this really cool sponsored series with Loren Academic Services. And we really want to just hear how you guys are all doing in this and get some new perspectives and have a nice dialogue and discussion about it. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to be co-facilitating, which basically means I'll be note-taking and just making sure we keep on schedule with discussion questions. But if anyone has any questions, there is a chat right here. So, you know, feel free to type in that. And that's how we can communicate. If you've got some comments on what someone else is saying and you don't want to interrupt, that's a good way to kind of jump in. We do request that everyone stays muted when you're not talking, just for the quality of the call. And obviously this is a live stream today. So hello to everyone who's watching, and thanks for being here. So I'm going to let Loren just introduce herself to you guys. Obviously you all know each other, but formal intro. And then Loren, do you want to just kind of start going down the row and calling on people, and everyone will just introduce who they are and what they'd like to get out of the chat today. Yeah. So I'll let you take it away.
Absolutely. So hi, I'm Loren. I do know most of you on this call, and Loren Deutsch from Loren Academic Services, founder and educational therapist, clinical social worker. I've worked in medical ed for about 25 years, and I'm not going to say anything more than that. And I'm going to pass it on over to Jillian, who you are and so forth.
Yeah, I'm Jillian. I'm a medical student at UIC in Chicago, and I'm like an M2 waiting to take STEP, so sort almost an M3. What else was I supposed to say? That's it?
You'll also say what you want to get out of the chat today. What are you?
I think for me, it was a little bit, I really loved working with Loren, so I wanted to do anything that she was a part of. And then also just to have a little bit of socialization with other people. So I was just like, oh, this would be fun on a Friday afternoon, you know?
I basically told Jillian that if she didn't come on to this, you know, I would get upset with her, and along with everybody else who's in here. No. Let's see, let's go down to Ryan. I'm like looking at the square. So Ryan, please introduce yourself and tell us about.
Hi everyone, I'm Ryan. I'm a third year, almost fourth year, sort of similar situation, medical student at Northwestern. Thanks again to Loren for inviting me. And similar things, I just, it would be great to just chat about what everyone's up to, and pretty open-minded as far as what to obtain from this, so look forward to it.
Okay, Dejanira, I think we can't see you, but we can see your name. And we can't hear you. How about if we
I
come
think-
back?
Yeah, we can come back.
Okay, Lita, how about you?
Hi. Okay, so I was
Here.
late. Hi, everyone. I'm Alita Mac. I was late and my kids are still like going to bed. So can you just tell me what I'm supposed to be doing? And I'm sorry because they're probably going to jump in here screaming. So
Yeah, Gertie has horrible children. I'll let Gertie tell you what you're supposed
Yeah,
to
so
do.
you're just gonna say your name and what you'd like to get out of the chat today.
okay, well, I'm Alita Mack. I'm a fellow, I'm a HEMONC fellow in my almost third year, please God, in Detroit. And I guess just kind of processing where I am as far as like the pandemic and how it's affecting me and my professional progress, and kind of hearing from you guys, who I assume are like-minded people, since we're all gathered by the amazing Loren.
Yay, that was a nice compliment. Let's go over to Lily and then to Dejanira or Juan. So Lily, take it away.
Okay, hi, I'm Lily. I go to Pritzker Medical School. I'm a second year, like Jillian. And I'm studying for step 1 right now. And yeah, I feel like I have so many opinions on this process, and I don't know. I thought it would be, I also do everything Loren tells me to do.
Yes.
And
The theme is that Lauren's bossy, but I don't know if that's like fair.
It's going in the notes for sure.
Shit. Oh,
look, you just have to give yourself over to it, you know? Anyway, and that's all. I'll stop talking.
okay. Juan, how about you?
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Juan Zamora Moran. I'm an academic learning specialist over at the College of Medicine, UIC. And I'm here because essentially I sort of want to like learn and hear from you and kind of share as well. And so thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And Dejanira, I don't know if you want to unmute and introduce yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yeah. Hi.
Oh
We
my
don't
goodness.
see you.
Okay, because I'm dialing. Yeah, I guess I'm not too used to Zoom. Anyway, I won't bore you guys with my technological problems. But yeah, I've been here the whole time, and I think talking just to myself. Yeah. So again, my name is Dejanira Cruz. I'm here because I'm in the midst of taking the GMAT exam to go to business school. And I have very, very strong feelings and opinions about standardized exams because I worked for the MCAT for 7 years up until late last year. I was working at the AMC, so I'm way too familiar, and I just think I know too much about admissions and tests. And so I'm here to help manage some of my feelings and thoughts around that. Thank you.
Very nice. Well, first of all, I just want to say welcome and thank you guys all for showing up and coming. And do we want to introduce Fireside at 5 at the bottom of the screen, or do we just, I know
Oh,
you.
that's just our account that's live streaming it.
and
Yeah. I don't think, are we missing anyone else?
I think we're missing Dorothy and Dorothy.
Okay. And I'm hoping Ocean and Sharice will sign on as well. So.
Yeah, I think through live stream, but I don't know, not on here. Yeah.
Okay. Well, great. I think I'll talk about Fireside at the end. I'd love for you guys to jump into the discussion questions and just kind of take it away from there.
Okay, so when Gordy and I were talking a little bit about sort of what's going on right now in the world and some of the narratives that we're hearing, one of the questions that comes up is sort of what does it mean to have so much uncertainty as you guys are preparing for such high stakes exams, right? And not just like uncertainty around the test date and what to do between now and when you take it, but like the ever changing test date, or how do you prepare for other things in the meantime? What do you do? And so I think the first question I wanted to explore was just like, how much time or energy currently, do you feel like you're putting into your preparation? And how is that different from what you were doing before, pre-COVID, in terms of your preparation? So I'm curious what people think about that. And everyone's on the spot looking like deer in the
Well,
headlights.
I'll talk. Hi.
Go,
I'm like
go,
maybe
go.
extrovert. I have no problem. So for me, I'm taking ITEs. They're like, it's just another test. It's like in training exams, which are supposed to assess where you are in terms of your learning. And so we have two. We have one for oncology that was in February, and then a month later, we get to repeat this one in March. And so I ended up in Detroit getting quarantined March 13th, and the test is supposed to be March 25th. And I was like, thank you, God, we don't have to take this. But then they kind of left us in limbo and said, that you could see on Twitter where the program directors were saying we should cancel, we should not, do this. And then somewhere in there, they threw in like a rescheduling for us. And like, it really was like, I feel like my general feelings are like, this is a pandemic. This is like not normal. And there's no, at least where I am, there's not a lot of, I think, thought put into like even helping us process that. And so I think trying to just like jump back in and get back to normal when like we're in a pandemic is crazy and it's not healthy. And now to add to it, they've rescheduled our tests for like June 9th and 10th. And so I have very strong feelings that it's not healthy.
I'm wondering if in terms of the preparation you were doing like initially and then when it was put on hold, how things stopped.
Yeah, so I mean, I really felt blindsided. You can see this wave coming, right? Oh, this is happening around the country. And then when it winds up in your back door and you're on quarantine and you're like, wait, I have 3 little kids. Jabari's birthday's today, so they're 3, 4, and 5. And it's like, wait, am I safe? Is my husband safe? So I just stopped. I mean, I felt like, and then I started like baking and eating. I mean, I really felt, I'm going to just tell you the whole truth. It was like, it required a lot of emotional energy just to like get up and keep going every day. So I just stopped studying. I just was like, I need time to process. But I think it's hard to live on 10 all the time, right? So now it's like back to work in April. And now I'm like, well, this is coming. It would behoove me to like get ready for it. So I feel like for a solid month, my preparation was basically nothing because I was just trying to like kind of hold it together emotionally, figure out if we were safe. And now I'm like, I still have a board exam to take. So I was like running double time trying to get ready for this ITE exam and then this board exam.
Yeah, I think like what Alita's saying, I'm curious, I know Jillian, you have been prepping for step 1 for a while, and I know that there were test dates that were we were just chatting before the meeting got started, but like what was going on leading up to the, initial test date, and then like what happened finding out that it was postponed, and just what does that do to your motivation even? What does that do to kind of, like what Alita is saying, is it pause and say, okay, I'm going to start baking and hanging out? Not that Alita was doing any of those things really in earnest, by the way, but okay.
I think for me, I would echo the feeling of frustration because my original date was May 13th and they canceled it. And then now they've reopened that date at the same test center. So I'm just like, so why'd you cancel mine? You know what I mean? So I'm sure that it's because of, I don't really know, but so it's just kind of confusing. And now I honestly, so a little bit of background for all of you who don't know me. I was supposed to take step like a year ago, and I've taken almost a year to get ready to take step 1, and I'm finally ready. And now all of this is going on, and it's really making me feel like I'm not ready again, because like sort of like what Alita was saying, that there's just all this uncertainty. And there have been days where I'm just like talking to my family and figuring out what's going on. And then days where and also the whole idea of how you get a step date is like gambling. And for me, I'm a huge gambler. So it's like super addictive. So I'm there all day. Like, can I get a better date? Can I get a better time? Can I get a closer place? At one point I was going to drive 8 hours to take the exam. So that way it was just the closest date that I could find. And I would rather drive 8 hours than have to wait 2 more months, So it's just been really frustrating in that sense. But at the same time, in terms of how I've been preparing and the isolation, that's kind of my norm since I've taken a year off and I've just been sort of in isolation, a whole year before all of this began.
I guess it makes me wonder, like, I know Lily, we've talked about this in some ways as well, in terms of just like, is there a relief that comes with like that postponement, or, is it more like, this is not such a relief, or what does it mean to have the relief and then you got to restart everything again? So I don't know if there's some thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, I hate I hate standardized testing. I knew I was gonna hate step one. Confirmed, I hate it. So I feel, yeah, there was almost like in watching step one, like kind of go up in flames, I was almost like, wow, like this is, this is great. Like there's like so much complete chaos that like, how can we be judged by these scores at the end of it? So I don't know, part of me is like, look, my future program director is going to look at my score and see when I took it, and hopefully like know and understand, what was going on. On the other hand, and this is just like, it is inevitable that it's just going to exploit the same access and privilege that, has always been exploited. For example, we have our group chat like you guys do too, I'm sure, for your peers or colleagues. And, like there's certain people in my class who are like, took it, like smiley face, like, like no problem. Like I don't have, no one needs me. Basically, I can just isolate and study and do, and it's like, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot going on in terms of who has the time to study for step one right now. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's.
No, it does. I mean, I think what it makes me think a little bit about is sort of the idea that, like, what does it feel like when you know that you were preparing and you had a test date and then that gets canceled, but some of the people did take the test and some of the students have taken it. And I know, Alita, in your case, that's not how that works with ITs, but, it would be for step one, or Ryan, in your case, in terms of being able to take certain shelf exams or not, right? That's going to be at the discretion of the university. And so if some people are getting to take a test that you've all been preparing for, for the same amount of time, or roughly for the same amount of time, and then all of a sudden some people get to take it, but some people don't. I guess, what does that do to your thoughts about the actual exam you're taking? Like, how does it change what, the view is in terms of what that exam is measuring, or what that exam is going? I mean, in step one in medicine is a pretty significant exam. It has some meaning. So I guess I'd be curious, there, like, so for those who took the test that, and you're still kind of going along and preparing, how do you feel about that for your rising M3s that are done at this point? I don't know, Juan, if you want to jump in and even talk about some of the students that you've talked with in terms of that, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, so students have expressed like an array of feelings, and it seems like similar to everyone taking step, not taking step, wherever they're in their lives, there's sort of like a cycle that people are kind of going through with whatever's kind of happening in their lives, like anger, frustration, fear. Personally, I kind of feel like I've gone through like a whirlwind of different types of emotions myself. So I think what I sort of like help to do when I speak with students when they may be spiraling in a way that isn't like productive or good for them is to sort of like offer them perspective and get them to think about what they've done so far and how hard they've been working, and reminding them of their accomplishments, and for them to reflect and think about their own accomplishments. So like, I think that as this test, or wherever you're at as a student or a professional, or whatever it is, that situation that you have, it's a very sort of like personalized experience that is changing, is transforming, and that change looks like, and time looks like different for everyone. So I think that the biggest thing that I remind myself and try to remind others is to kind of really like listen to their body, listen to their feelings, and kind of like once they've processed all of the heaviness that the situation has brought upon all of our lives, is to kind of find some type of like routine. Like, I know that may sound, I don't know, weird, but I think having some type of consistency helps with the processing of feelings. At least for me, it does. So yeah, that's kind of
I mean, I
the answer
think
to the
you're
question.
bringing up something that, you know, is, I know in the work that I do, I'm often thinking about emotions and learning, and where, you know, people are feeling intensely about something and how that is impacting or shifting the way in which they're, you know, proceeding or pursuing what it is that they're learning. And I guess what it makes me wonder about is we place such an emphasis on so many of these exams, and really, you know, I know we're talking about this in terms of medical ed, but in general ed too, from SAT and GMAT. I know Dejanara, you're talking about taking GMAT, and we place so much on what these scores mean that the number becomes everything. And in some ways, I feel like it kind of obfuscates like everything else about an individual, right? And so, I mean, maybe if that's something, I don't know, Dejanara, if you want to maybe speak a little bit to just what it is, you know, that you've been feeling as you've got a test date, you're clear, hey, I want to take this in July, or I'm thinking of taking this in July, and you have some maybe latitude about that. Unlike, you know, if the test is sort of written in stone, it's on this day that you will take this, like in Alita's case, this is when the IT is, and these are the 2 days you're taking it, and period. So I don't know if does that give you comfort that you know you have the ability to push that deadline out, or does it, you know, lead to more frustration, especially in light of the fact that a lot of these testing centers are just simply closed right now and just at the very beginnings of reopening. So I'm curious what you think about that. You
Are
maybe
you talking?
am I?
No, I was just telling Dejanara because, like, you know,
I'm talking.
Okay,
Oh,
all right, go
now
ahead.
you are. Okay.
We're with you.
It is totally user error. It's just me. It's not the platform. Anyway, so what I was just saying is that, yeah, it's just introducing a new source of anxiety and stress that I don't really need. You know, with these tests, these high stakes exams, like, you want to have knowns. Like, I need to know that, and so much of my performance personally is like environmental, like my surroundings, like how, yeah, I can study for something, but it's like, am I getting good rest? Am I not feeling anxious? And this situation isn't helping with that. Also with the GMAT, what they've done is they've taken out 1/4, they've gutted the exam. So they had like this essay portion that they don't have anymore if you take the altered version at home. And I'm like, it's really questioning, like, again, I have complicated feelings about standardized exams, but something like that is like, well, why don't you just scrap the whole thing then? I don't know. Like, I know that's me being flippant and being a little, just possibly just annoyed, but if you're not testing it at home, I'm guessing it's because, does it not mean much to business school? Like, is it not, like, I just worry about the validity of it and what it really shows, you know, and why they're yeah, like gutting the exam now. And I'm like, let's look at the whole damn thing, you know. Let's not look at just that section, but I think that's just my frustrations talking. But yeah, it's a frustrating situation, and I need to have more knowns and unknowns at this point, and I haven't been getting that.
I think, you know, I appreciate what you're saying, and I think anytime a test changes, like in a dramatic way, right, from something to something else, particularly under these circumstances where there's a lot of uncertainty. I'm thinking in step 1, for example, we know next, you know, potentially within the year, this is going to be a pass-fail exam. And so now the question becomes, should it be pass-fail? I'm wondering sooner, or, you know, a test that has so much meaning. And Dejanara, to your point, right, if GMAT is designed a certain way, which we know it is for quant and verbal, et cetera, what do we do when all of a sudden there's like this sort of new version or this at-home version? Does that, you know, change like the seriousness or the gravity of it, or like the weightiness of it? And I know, Ryan, you've taken step one, and, you know, I don't know if you have some thoughts about what, you know, what that means in terms of what's on the horizon, and how seriously to take these kinds of exams.
Well, you know, I think step one overall is a frustrating exam for a lot of reasons that have already been iterated, but, you know, I can still sort of relate to all the things you guys are saying. I don't know, you know, what it's like to be preparing for it right now, but at the same time I can relate because I am preparing for step two, and
Thankfully.
I've had painfully, slowly, but it's what I'm telling myself I'm doing. So I guess I was saying, like, all the same things are frustrating to me as well.
Do they lose their meaning? Does the test lose, like, you know?
Well, you know, I don't know if it loses its meaning overall, but it sort of loses its day-to-day meaning to me as a student, because as someone was already saying, just the lack of certainty, the lack of, I guess, understanding when this exam will happen. As far as like my situation, I have 2 other shelf exams to take and a month of clinical stuff that I want to do before I take the exam, because I think that doing those things will, I don't know, serve to my benefit by doing them first. And so knowing that, I don't know when I can take those exams, I don't know when I can reschedule my step 2 to fit the way I want to do it, it loses meaning in that way, because I don't know when to give it the meaning that it needs, I guess.
Lily, it's like you were gonna, no, I mean, I think that's actually, I think a point. I mean, and I know, Jillian, you wrote something really interesting, and Lily, you looked like you were gonna say something, so I'm.
Oh yeah, that was John, but I do have something to say, yes. Oh, do you want me to say it now? Are we going to say something else? So the other piece that gets me, and like I'm a little farther along in this, but a lot of this, in my humble opinion, this is about money, right? Like, let's not forget there's a whole economic piece to this, and there's a difference. I wonder how much, like, because people are finishing fellowship in June. So taking June 30th, the score is not going to be back until sometime in August, at which point, at least for the hematology certifying exam, they probably would have already taken it. So like the utility of the score it's questionable at this point, but what's not questionable is it's $250 a pop. And if they can't, no, but I'm serious, Jillian, I'm dead serious. If they cancel it, they have to reimburse the money. And like a lot of these tests in medicine, I have to calm myself down, but a lot of this is about money. And like, I just feel like now is not an appropriate time to be like wielding that. And I wish that our program director is wonderful and he's doing what he can, but I wish that maybe they would have pushed more to say, hey, for like the health of our fellows who are like going in every day and taking care of COVID patients. Some of us have family members, like most of us know someone. We had 2 people in our program who got it. Like, do we really need to be doing this now? You know, but then when it comes back to, you know, the Society of Hematology losing like $25,000, I really think that that's like a powerful motivator, and for all of these tests. But.
Well, and I think Lilita, I think you're 100% correct. And think about, like, Lily and I were just typing about CS. I mean, CS is so expensive because it's only offered in certain parts of the country. So you have to fly somewhere to go take it, right? Or think about like the oral boards for surgery.
Yeah.
You have to fly somewhere to take it. It's not like it's offered just in your city. So you're talking about a lot of expense and time, and at this point, risk, huge risk.
Yeah.
So CS has like a 98% pass rate. So the idea of it being like a meaningful like licensing exam is really like completely useless.
And I think is CS, because that's the one where they have the part where it's like basically, do you know how to interact with another human? Is that what CS is? No, but really,
yes,
that's why
clinical skills. Yes,
is it like? I mean,
patient. Oh man.
like, I just wonder how helpful that actually is for program directors. Like if you, because I think they care so much about the numbers. I'm sorry, I sound so jaded. I'm really not that jaded, but I think it's important to think about this stuff because like, so that's the other thing I will say is my $250, that's what the program pays. When I show up to take the actual exam and I have to take 2 of them, they are about $2,000 a piece. Right. So yes, Gertie, that's the face. That's how I feel too. It's very, very expensive. And so I think if program directors, like who's going to look at CS and be like, oh, wait, this person scored in like the 98th percentile in step 1, but yes, they didn't do well on CS. You really think they're going to be like, no spot for you in this program? I highly doubt it. I think they'll be like, oh, because I work with those people. They don't know how to talk to people. They can tell you everything about every red blood cell down to like the biochemistry, and it's amazing. But then when it comes to talking to a human, you're like, hey, what's happening here? So anyway, we should question these things, people. Anyway,
Well, we
please
should.
continue.
I think you're right.
Can I jump in? I think a personal frustration for me is that I'm the complete opposite of that. Like I'm really good with people and I'm not very good with the like, yes, right. And so, yeah. And so it's hard that the parts that are so heavily weighted are these ones that are not my strengths. And then the ones that everybody's just sort of like, you know, that's where I really shine. And that's what will make me a really great physician. And so it's really frustrating. And I'm glad to hear that I'm not the only one who struggles with that, because I'm like, step 1 is probably not going to be, you know, the best score for me. And yeah, I know I'm going to be a great doctor, but somehow it's still going to limit the residencies that look at my application. It's going to limit so many things. And
I think you're bringing the point up, Jillian, about like, so what happens when all of a sudden step 1 is pass fail? So like a year from now when it's pass fail, right? So the students who took it this year, it's not pass fail, but next year it is. So then like, what does that mean in terms of how seriously we should look at those scores? What is it that it's testing this year that it's not testing next year?
Truth. Bye.
Lily, I know you want to say something.
No, no, step 1 was never supposed to be a meaningful indicator of like fitness for the profession. It was supposed to be, it was supposed to be pass fail. So like, you know, in its origin, which I did while extensively researching the NBME one time, because I was curious about how much money they make as a nonprofit that has no philanthropic source of revenue other than it's a nonprofit, and it's just a business that, anyway, I was doing a lot of great stuff like looking up the salaries of everyone who works there and things like that. But to their credit, they realized that their exam has been totally exploited by program directors who don't have the capacity to do holistic, you know, review. So I don't know. I think like there's no like good guys and bad guys. It's just like everyone's lazy. Step 1 score is easy and quantitative, and yeah.
I mean, I think go ahead. Sorry.
But I feel like one of the papers, I looked at these articles, but now that I feel like someone has done this study with the anesthesia residents about how step 1 is predictive of something that like.
Wait, what study now?
Yeah, it's in the articles.
He sent a bunch of articles out.
Lily, I'm not the man. I'm not in support of this. I'm just like this study. I'm looking at it on my phone. Predictors of success on board certification exams.
Oh, on board exams.
If it's a bastardization of step 1 or what, but that's what this, look, you can't see it, but it's in there. It's in the bottom of the article, right? So like they care so deeply about this.
I spend a lot of time, as you know, talking with program directors as well as with deans. And what I'm often told when I raise this question is, you know, the seriousness about step 1, what if that score is not so high and yet you have this amazing physician? And the concern is very real, I think, because, and this gets into ACGME at some level, right? There are certain, you know, core competencies that are required, but one of them is board certification at the end, right? You need to be able to pass an exam. So if we look numerically at standardized exams that provide some type of information as a predictive value about passing a board exam, then that becomes very serious, because what happens if that person doesn't pass? So that's the question that gets raised to me. I would argue that's sort of missing the point of physicianship to some extent, and maybe even to a large extent. But I can understand that if you have X number of residents that you're looking at resumes or CVs with, and Dejanira, I know it may be quite different on the GMAT side, but I imagine there's a correlate there too, which is you're going to have business schools that are going to be looking at you, but you will also have businesses, corporations that are going to say, well, what did this person get on, her GMAT, or what is her GPA? Now, does that mean that's a measure of you as an entrepreneur or a business person or what have you? Probably not. And in fact, we know, dating back to ACT, SAT, etc., there is no correlation that says you will succeed, let's say in college, if you have a high ACT score. If you have a high GPA in high school, we do see that the correlation is there. So those are really different measures. So, I think it begs the question about the utility of the exam in the first place. What is a predictor of success? And so if it's a predictor of success on a board exam,
or a predictor of success in what? I think some of these exams, some of the medical schools and business schools probably like extrapolate and give them meaning and derive, they get meaning from the data, but it only takes you so far. Like someone said, like, I think it was Jillian, like I still know one day I'm going to be a great physician, and that's true, but that's not what these tests are measuring. So it's very finite what these tests are measuring, and for what they're measuring, they're causing a lot of anxiety and stress, especially right now during COVID. But I will say that at least for the GMAT, I was surprised because they are charging less for the at-home version right now. And I was really, it's like $100 less. And so going back to that point of like, this is only like, this is like a business, and I totally echo that. I mean, all of these things, just be, don't be weary, don't be jaded, but just be alert and awake, right? Just be aware of what's going on. And, but when they decided to lower the rate, to me, I don't know, it indicated something of like, I don't know if it's like the integrity of the exam, but it was like, okay, we just want you guys to take it, and you don't even have to do the essay portion, and it's $100 less, like, because like GMAC has bills to pay. So it's I don't know, it doesn't leave me feeling very good about the version of the exam. It just seems kind of, it could be legitimate, but it just seems kind of like a desperate bid to not lose as much revenue.
Yeah, or like NBME, who sent around some kind of like, we're not charging a fee for changing your study. Like they sent some early communication about how they weren't charging a certain fee. And I was just like, my only thought that I had reading it was like, why do you charge that fee to begin with? Like that fee makes literally no sense. And now you get to be like this like generous, like, oh God, like the NBME is so like,
right, like a hero, and you're just in baseline
like,
human. Yeah.
Like I'm very involved in the student government at Pritzker, and like the biggest thing this year was just like, or one of them was just like students not being able to afford like Sketchy and like UWorld and all these resources. And like, yeah, now they're all like we're really just like feeling for like our students right now. And like, it's just like, why does this industry exist, in the first place?
It's interesting, Lily, you raise a really, I think, important question about, I always say to like my instructors when we're meeting, I always say like, our goal is to put ourselves out of business, which doesn't really thrill my accountant very much or anybody else. But I actually really do think we have a responsibility that like, if we're really teaching in a way that's meaningful, the goal should be that we're teaching so that people are able to independently kind of go forth and do what it is that they're training to do. It kind of makes me think a little bit about like the idea of just what we use internally to like measure our own success and how much that informs what goes on externally, right? So like in medicine or in business or in law, there are these constructs that are out there. There's a bar exam, or there's a GMAT or a GRE or a, you know, LSAT, etc. But are those the measures we personally use? Like, is that how we know internally that we're succeeding at what it is that we're doing? Or are we using something else? And you know, for those of you who are going off to be physicians, right, is that the construct you're going to ultimately use to determine that? I'm curious. Ryan.
Am I muted? Well, can you, if you can hear me?
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Oh yeah, I can hear you. I don't know if I have a direct answer to the question, but yeah, Lauren, I can't hear you. Maybe that's what's going on.
Can you hear me now? Is that better? Sorry about that. My question is just sort of, how do you measure in your own mind, like internally, how do you know that when you go off and graduate from Feinberg and you go into residency or beyond, right? How will you know that you're going to be a good physician? Is it going to be the score that you got on step 1 or 2 or 3, or ITs or shelf exams or board exams for that matter? Or is it going to be like what you do as a physician and the decisions that you're making as a clinician? That's the question I'm asking.
So yeah, and I still think that it's kind of a complicated answer, especially the way that I think about it, because I don't know, I've struggled with not necessarily accepting my step 1 score, but I don't know, understanding how that will play a role in what I will do. But I don't think that necessarily defines it at all. I don't really think it has anything to do with it. I think it's more so, I don't know, demonstrating I guess certain capabilities at a certain time. And as we all have sort of reflected upon today, those situations are very different for everyone, and circumstances can change very quickly that can affect that. And so I don't think that the number at all defines what kind of physician you should be. But all I'm saying is it's complicated because even before COVID, this was something that I sort of thought about a lot and thought about, or because I'll be honest, I think that before I took step 1, I think that maybe I would have believed otherwise, or would have had a much more shallow answer to this question. So for me, it's just all of those reasons make it, I don't know, complicated to say. I don't know.
I mean, I appreciate what you're saying. I don't, Dejanara, did you want to say something? It's like you were responding. No. So I think it makes me think a little bit about like even the question of like, do we have time in this sort of space of time right now that we have to kind of process how we're feeling about it? And in the day-to-day of like day in and day out, you go to classes, if you're an M1, M2, you don't have a whole lot of time to push pause and to think, you know, how am I doing? How am I feeling, etc. Right? And then all of a sudden you're into step 1 prep. Or like in Alita's case or Dejanara's case, right? You're doing something where you're working day in and day out. And Alita's in the hospital all day long. She has to decontaminate to come back into her house, etc. You know, Dejanara, you've got the preparation you need to do for GMAT and to think a lot about what that's going to look like. I guess the question is, does this time, this period of time, buy us some opportunity to push pause and to think, is there another way to evaluate this? And is there something we can do maybe differently? Instead of just relying on this one construct, is there a way that this becomes more of a call to arms to say, no, this isn't the way to maybe assess student readiness for physicianship, or this isn't a sufficient way to assess whether you're ready to go into residency, or which residency, or which specialty.
I don't think it can ever be an efficient way, knowing how much stress and anxiety and just honestly, it's sort of a form of trauma what it causes to students undergoing the process, even like listening to what you all have said about taking step one and then just reflecting on my own step one experience, pushing it back like several times, another month, and still ultimately, I think performing the same way I would have done if I'd stuck with my original test date 3 months earlier. And so I think that, I guess to answer your original question, the way that I sort of went into it is the whole time I felt like I don't think that I'm going to do well on this exam, and that mindset I think played a major role in the score that I got. But also I think that that was important for me to experience and learn from, because from that I ended up taking a year off of school. I sort of knew I wanted to do that before I took the exam. I sort of already, I don't know, in a way convinced myself the way the exam was going to go. And through that, I learned that I don't know, I wanted to spend a lot of time thinking about, is this what I really want to do? Did I make a mistake by going to medical school? Because I was not really in a happy place at that time as far as like exam prep and taking this exam and this material and the way that I struggled with it. But I guess what I decided is I don't think that a number can ever tell it, because the number doesn't tell the whole story. At the end of it, it's more so about the fact that you can continue to pursue something even when it's not going to be like the way you anticipated or the easiest way, or the results that you expect. If you're willing to continue to work on it, I think that demonstrates so much more than a number ever can do. You're muted, Loren.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's a really heartfelt, comment or commentary about this process. It's, in some ways, I think it so speaks to like, you put your heart and soul into something, like what it takes to get into medical school or what it takes to stay in medical school, like the competing demands for time and energy and emotions and what you put on hold and so forth. And there's so much that goes into that to then get to a point where you're like, now I have to prepare for this majorly high stakes exam that's supposed to determine what specialty, what medical center, etc. It's quite a lot to put into one exam, and be that as it may, like that it may be easier as a program director to be able to assess, which student to pick for match purposes. I think it places an enormous burden on one day, one slice of time, one experience of taking an exam. It's quite a lot to ask. I appreciate you sharing that, because I think you really capture that experience in terms of the seriousness of this, the gravity of it. Yeah.
In a way, it also just sort of made me think about the mindset going into exams. And I think that the more of these exams you do, the harder it is to, I guess, maintain a positive mindset towards them. Because I think, at least from my experience, I don't know, taking the MCAT, I just knew like, once I take this exam, once I get this score, I'll have an application and that'll be the end of it. And then I'll have what I want, because, well, that was as far as I could see. But then, coming to step one, I realized, well, this is just step one of many, and there's always going to be more. And it's not fun now, and I don't think it's ever going to be fun. And so I think that when you think about it like that, it's very easy to lose interest or lose motivation, or just tell yourself, well, I got this far, clearly I can do this, and I'm just overthinking it, or clearly, I don't know, clearly it's going to work out regardless, when you still have to work pretty hard to maintain that. It's, I don't know, the mindset is very important, at least for me.
Ryan, can I tell you something? Sorry, we have another person. We might have two more in a minute. I can't tell.
Maya, hi. Sorry.
I totally echo. Did you just pee on me? I totally echo, and it's real. And I think she peed on me. But anyway,
that's the best part of this whole meeting.
Because it's not for me. My leg is okay. But anyway, I totally hear what you're saying about the trauma. And like, I've worked with Loren. Loren, I don't even remember how many years. I don't remember when I was in med school. It was like 2012, 2011. And I will tell you, I'm like a Hillmonk fellow now. And I just want you to know, like, I barely passed step one. I'll tell all of you. It was probably like 1 or 2 points that I past step one. And I can see now after working with Loren, going to therapy, and then just like I actually had a breakthrough this last week. Like I personally, the trauma is so deep and it really messed me up because I put my whole self on trial, and it's very hard. Like I think Loren, you asked earlier about a revolution if we were gonna, this isn't gonna be a call to arms, because I think that medicine is very hierarchical. And I think that most people, the system selects for people who do the test. And I used to be someone to do the test. And for me, my not doing of the test isn't, I finally realized, and like I'm trying to live out, it's not about aptitude, it's about me putting myself on trial and like, am I enough? I mean, really, these tests, it becomes like, it's really like it's like a do or die, life or death. So much anxiety, which I've now discovered is called anxiety around it, that I put I and no one else is doing it to me but me. I'm putting myself on trial and like my worthiness every time I take one of these tests. And that is hard to like carry that weight. And it's step one, it's step two, it's the CS, it's the step three, it's the, the board, it's all of these things. And I think one of the things that I'm finally doing is trying to like unpack what all of that stuff, so that when I show up to take the test, it can just be a test. Sorry if I went off too long, but because I think sometimes we look at people and you don't know where they are. But I'm telling you, step one, just barely over the hurdle. So I say that to you, that if you really want to do something and whatever, I just think you should go get it. That's beyond the scope of this call, but I couldn't.
No, I don't actually think it, Alita, thank you for saying all that. I don't think
I appreciate that. I really do.
It was just a couple of steps. And do you know what Dr. McDade, he said to me, he's like, oh God, what are you going to do? That's so bad. Are you going to, like, am I going to be anything, basically? But I am a human.
Alita's being a little bit modest, because what she's also not saying is she has a PhD and an MD. So she's actually gone through school and then some to the nth degree. And yet here's somebody who's in many ways what we would say academically at the like pinnacle or at the zenith of sort of what it means to be an academic. That's Jacoby. I'm sorry. Shit. Jacoby, no. I'm so sorry. Okay. And yet, she's questioning a step one score that was how many years ago? That's like 8 years ago, 10 years ago. Like Lily, I think about like where you are in preparation for this, or like Juan, where you've got students who are in the process of preparing for this, and Jillian being one of them. And it's like, I wish I could like wave the flag and say, you guys, it's one data point at one point in your lives. This isn't going to be the thing that actually marks whether or not you're going to be a good doctor.
I mean, I feel like from my perspective, I've so deeply internalized that like I like sometimes feel like I need to go the other way. Like I have like no identity. I'm like, and well, one thing I've been thinking about on this chat is just what it feels like to be like a quote unquote non-traditional student, which is defined, I guess, a lot of different ways, but maybe as like being slightly older when you started med school, and just like, I don't care. Like, I don't care. I took a practice exam. I like was not possible to fail more than I failed. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I cannot care, and that's sometimes bad. I'm like, I need to care. But so, which is to say, the other thing, about being non-traditional is like, I just feel like I thrive in uncertainty, and like, or like I feel like I'm very equipped to handle uncertainty, and I sort of worry about people who like haven't had the experience of like highly uncertain times before, because I'm like, I don't know.
You haven't had the experience of failure or the experience.
Yeah, right.
Really
like I just like set low expectations. Like, I don't know. I feel like I sometimes feel like I need to get more into the competitiveness of everything, but but yeah, I have like fully like de-identified.
But so I think, Lily, just to, I think maybe put a piece around that. I think if, in terms of the caring part, I always like say this, I want you guys to care about your patients. Like, I want you to care about what you're going to actually do to cure something or someone. I want you to like care about that. If you're going to care emotionally at some level about an exam, about a data point, then I think in some ways we may be missing the point of what it means to become a physician, right? If that's the piece we're going to care about, I'm not saying don't care about how you do or how you learn. You should care deeply about how you learn. But the data point itself isn't going to be the thing that defines you as a physician. It won't. Like, and it can't. I think we'd be remiss in the public, or I think we'd be remiss, you know, in so many ways that I don't know. Yeah. So I guess I would encourage you not to lose sight of that piece.
I think that ties in sort of, so your question about, you know, is this a call to arms? And then Ryan and Alita's answers about, you know, how this trauma that all of this causes and having, it's a continued trauma because it's not just, you know, SAT and then MCAT and, you know, like everything that goes, it's continued. And then we have to keep taking exams well into being physicians. I think one of the things in the readings that you sent out was like some sort of like a burnout questionnaire type thing. And what struck me about that, because I come from education, I was a teacher for 10 years before I came to medical school, and I completely burned out. But it was not, and I was an urban teacher. Everybody says, oh yeah, the families and the kids. And I'm like, no, that was what kept me in teaching. It was the system that burned me out. And this is an example of the system burning us out. And not one question on that questionnaire dealt with anything outside of the patients or, you know, so it's just assuming that the patients are what suck us dry. And I don't think that that's going to be the case, at least for me. I think that's what's going to keep me going. And my political work and, you know, being an advocate and using our voice and using our power to better our society is what's going to keep me going. What burns me out is how slow that process is and how these institutions, these being, you know, these money-making things that set some sort of meaning and make me feel less than, that's what burns me out personally. And it's even interesting to see that in the questionnaire of burnout, like none of it was questioning the system itself. It was all questioning the patients, which to me is the reason why most people become physicians.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
So I think I appreciate, Jillian, what you're saying. I think that when I started using that like inventory, I was interested in it because I was looking at it from a perspective of burnout for a paper that I was doing. And I was like thinking, well, is there really a way to even capture this and to really kind of elucidate what it is that somebody feels? And I know Charisse Maynard, who we work with, often says, like, can you just describe, like, well, what is your definition of burnout? Like, how would you actually define it? And for a long time, I said this to her. I'm like, there's two things. One, I feel like sometimes it's a euphemism for what is actually going on around, like effectively around depression or anxiety, et cetera. But you could either think, is it a precursor to that, or is it in like just simply another way of describing it without actually labeling what it is? And I think that's a worry that I have, is that we come up with a word that sort of is the euphemism for what it is we're saying. So it reminds me of something which is sort of crass and like uncool for me to say, but I'm going to just put it out there. George Carlin, a comedian who's deceased, has this incredible piece that he does on the euphemism for PTSD, for burnout, for emotional exhaustion, compassion fatigue. And I actually happen to have seen it many years ago in Vegas when he was still alive. And he did this piece on what it was to burn out. And the whole point was like when soldiers were coming back from war, when veterans were returning and they were having so much difficulty just reintegrating into society, like what it meant for them to have that level of difficulty to do the very thing that they once did day in, day out so easily. And it's literally where my profession started from. It's where educational therapy actually kind of came out of, was that. And so I guess I think about, you know, Jillian, what you're saying is so important in terms of that level of burnout or what can happen in the preparation, you know, for such a high stakes exam, the worry I have is in the uncertainty of like time. How do you remain motivated about something for month after month after month that is already something you have such strong feelings about? You know, it's a hard ask, I think. It really is. So
I'm gonna just quickly jump in super quick because we're getting to our 6 o'clock mark. Well, 6 o'clock my time, probably 7 o'clock for most of you guys. So I just want to really quick chime in and say this has been an awesome discussion. And for someone who isn't in the medical field, it was really enlightening, and I really enjoyed hearing all of your perspectives. So thanks so much for being open and sharing. Jillian, I want to add a comment to what you kind of said, your last point, as about how we can keep fighting for change within this system. And I think this platform is a really good way to do that. You know, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is a really collaborative, conversational place for people. And what we try to do is put the right people in the room to make change happen. And so if there are chats that you would want to be a part of in the future, and we can get, you know, some of these directors involved, and so they can actually hear your feedback, I think that'd be really important. And I know that's something that, you know, Loren, we're talking about doing with more of these chats. And if we need to add more in the future, we definitely can too, because these are important issues that I think need solutions. And I think that's going to start from you guys. So I just want to throw that out there, and thank you guys all for joining and being so open and honest and enlightening me, because I love hearing about all of this as well. So
yeah, I echo that, Gertie. Thank you guys so much for just taking time out of your day and so forth. Juan wrote something really beautiful, I think, in the chat that if you haven't taken a look at is really worth seeing. And I don't know, Juan, if you want to just say something about that in closing, might be nice to share.
Sure, thank you. So as I was listening to you all speak, there were sort of like three things or three concepts or topics, whatever, that were coming from this conversation. The first had to do with uncertainty, which made me think then of vulnerability. And then I mentioned a researcher there out of Texas. She has some TED Talks to consider that I think are amazing. Second is sort of like the question of like, what are these things actually measuring? How are they actually beneficial? What do they then mean now for the future? And then as potential future leaders in the medical world, you can then turn and kind of bringing up Julian's earlier point, and then deciding whether or not these exams are worth taking or doing or promoting or having it, or being an influencing decision as people progress in their medical profession. I think the fact that you're questioning these things now is amazing. It's great. And as students and practitioners, you should definitely be doing. And thirdly, the last point had to do with our own thoughts and feelings and emotions on how they certainly affect our ability to like learn, think, focus, and concentrate. And so in any sort of like given profession, the ability to reflect and think about our own actions and behaviors and thoughts and feelings can really help to sort of put us in a different mindset and perspective to be able to like move forward. So thank you all for sharing that with me and allowing me to be here with you all.
Also, sorry, I'm just so curious, Juan, you are so awesome. And what is your job? I didn't catch that at the beginning.
Oh, I am an academic learning specialist.
That is so cool. And so that's like something that UIC Med School like has as a amenity for their students.
Yeah, so it's equivalent to like a medical coach. And so I was fortunate enough to be trained by LAS by Loren. And so that's why I'm here and why I've been invited. And so I'm like, oh, she's having this. This is great. So thank you all.
Cool.
Yeah, Lily, I think you actually are asking a really neat question, and I will put a plug in there. And Juan's being a little bit modest, but I had the privilege of being at UIC for a number of months in this year and training their specialists there and in Peoria. And it's really cool what they're doing in terms of having full-time learning specialists, people who are literally there for the sole purpose of making sure that students are learning, that they are achieving, that they're retaining information, that their mental health and well-being is, being considered. And they have started a well-being center and so forth. We were actually supposed to have somebody on the call who was from there, but I'm hoping he'll come back in one of the subsequent conversations. But it's really, really wonderful what's going on that campus. It's something, Juan, I hope you're very proud of, because it's unique in so many ways and it's really cool. Like it is. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you guys again for joining. And I did take notes during this entire conversation. So if you scroll down past the articles, everything we've talked about is in there for your reference. Feel free to come back to this agenda. We do have this, this was live streamed as well. So the chat will be available for you guys to watch. And yeah, that's kind of all I've got to say, but thank you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Fireside at 5. We really appreciate your help. This is awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
you.
Great
Everyone.
time.
Bye, guys.
Bye, baby.
Bye, Anaya.
You're the best part of it.
Bye. So nice to meet you guys.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.